James here, and today we're going to be talking about the reality of keeping a fish rack or a fish room or whatever you want to call it. So a bit of backstory. I've been in the fish keeping hobby now seriously for about 2 years now. Originally I had a little 19 litre tank which I had a couple of platies, a guppy and some neon tetras I think it was, and that's out in my living room. Then I had a child and then I was forced to move that out of the living room because I didn't want my son knocking into the tank or anything, so I moved that into the kitchen. Then I got a bit MTS, multiple tank syndrome. I ended up getting another fish tank and then another fish tank, and they all sat in my kitchen for a while. So if you look back on some of my previous Instagram posts, I think there's a few videos and pictures that you can see of my fish in the kitchen here. So during lockdown period, I wanted to set up my nano reef tank, and that obviously meant more space. My kitchen currently is very full, and it meant that I couldn't have any more tanks in here. So I took upon myself to buy a rack from Amazon, just a cheapy sort of one, and I set it up in my conservatory, which is directly behind me. I had that in there for about a month or so now, but it's just gotten to the point where it's becoming too difficult to manage, and also we wanted to switch it up from our kitchen here, so we had a table in here and everything, and we wanted to move that into the conservatory so we could actually eat as a family because we got another baby now, and yeah, things were getting a little bit tight. So again, I decided to move from the conservatory, which, as you can imagine, with the conservatory I was having a few issues such as light, algae, temperature swings, all of that. So me and the missus come to an agreement, and she's let me keep them basically back in the kitchen where the temperature's a bit more stable now. But obviously, unfortunately, I'm taking up half the wall for it. But it's so much better here now, and my tanks seem to be doing so much better for not being in those kind of conditions, which is great. The things I wanted to talk about really, obviously, when keeping a fish room or a fish rack or whatever, is a few things. Obviously, you need to take into consideration your electric bills, your water bills, whoever pays the bills, because you know, more tanks means more water, more electric, more energy. So that's one thing to factor. Obviously there's a cost involved to it as well. It can get a bit obsessive, I must admit, like the obsession with trying different setups in different tanks. But also with the racking system, obviously there's a lot of tanks set up on different levels. Now, if you haven't pre-prepared yourself for the kind of tanks that you're having on each level, you might get it a bit wrong. So I've made the mistake in the past. I have rectified it since I've moved them, but this tank at the bottom here, for example, was a bit difficult when it came to water changes, so I couldn't lift the lid more than about this, which presented a bit of a pain. So they're just things to bear in mind if you're setting up like a racking system or anything, is just to make sure that you've got enough room to do your water changes. Also, when you find a space for your rack, try and keep it there as much as you can, because moving this thing was an absolute mission. It took me best part of nearly 2 hours just to take down 5 tanks, and because I couldn't do it all in like stages, I had to do it all in one go, which means that I had to drain all of my tanks and then put them into my kitchen on the floor and on the worktops here, half full with water so my fish could survive, because I didn't have enough room to put all my fish in any buckets and stuff. And then I had to build the fish rack again, then set it up, and then put by one each one of my tanks back into the place that I wanted. And I had a thought about changing some of my tanks, which I kind of regret now, but it has worked. You know, now I've just done a few other tweaks and changes. This worked out actually really well. But one thing that I did do, which I must admit was a mistake, was I misjudged the spaces between the tanks and the shelves, because I wanted to give enough room for water changes, which meant that one of my shelves is now probably about this much space between, which means all I can fit now is just products and stuff, which is kind of turned out well because I was running out of space to put all of my fertilizers and foods and everything like that. So that's kind of worked really well. So I think really ultimately what I'm trying to say is if you are going to set up one of these fish racks or have a dedicated fish room, is just, you know, make sure you've pre-planned really what you want on each one of the shelves or in what location, the actual shelving unit itself, whereabouts in the house are you going to put it, because they can become a bit of a eyesore, they can become a bit of a pain, they're awkward to take apart and rebuild. It gives you backache when you change your fish tanks or you know, move them about and stuff. So you have to be quite committed to what you're doing really to have one of these. I think it's a bit more thought involved than I'd originally set out for. I think I just thought, oh yeah, I'll just buy a rack, stick some tanks on it, and then I can move them about when I want and add more if I need to. But yeah, the reality is obviously you get stuck. Not all tanks, you know, you kind of have multiple ones on certain shelves as well if you've got bigger tanks, so that becomes a problem. Trying to squeeze everything else into it in terms of plugs and wiring is just a nightmare. I've got 3 adapters running here. And I need to make sure that they're off the floor just in case of water leaks or anything like that hit the plug sockets for, you know, tripping the electric. So there's quite a few things to think about when you know, sort of doing this. But in my experience, even though it was a pain and there's a lot of aggro to it, it's definitely been worth it because it means that I get a few tanks that I actually want. So I've got, you know, different types set up on each of my tiers now, and I've got a nice little section for my food. So all's well that ends well, as you will. So I hope you liked this video on my fish rack. If you did, please give it a like or a thumbs up and let me know your experiences of fish racks or a fish room and the trials and tribulations that you've had throughout in the comments below. And if you could, hit that subscribe button because it really helps me out. Until next time, stay safe.